pillar, so they pushed it. So there is a story behind it that in the next one the guide will explain.
ఈ దేవస్థానం విజయనగర సామ్రాజ్యంలో పెట్టారు. అప్పుడు ఈ హాల్ 70 స్తంభాలు ఉన్నాయి. ఈ 70లో ఇది ఒకటి మాత్రమే వేలాడే స్తంభం. దీన్ని ఒక రోజు టెస్ట్ చేద్దామని 1902లో బ్రిటిష్ గవర్నమెంట్ ఇద్దరు ఇంజనీర్లు బ్రిటిష్ వాళ్ళకి ఇంత పెద్ద స్తంభం నేల మీద నచ్చు కాకుండా ఉంది, పైన ఏమన్నా కనిపించారా, అక్కడ ఏముందో టెక్నిక్ చూద్దామని వస్తారు. వాళ్ళు వచ్చినప్పుడు ఈ పిల్లలు కొంచెం ముందరుకుంటారు. ఇక్కడ ఎక్కువ స్తంభాన్ని వాళ్ళు ఐరన్ రాడ్ తీసుకొని బలంగా వెనక్కి జరిగినారు. జరిగినప్పుడు ఇలా ఉన్న స్తంభం వాళ్ళు జరపడం వల్ల కొంచెం కూడా సైడ్కి వారి ఎప్పుడైతే సైడ్కి పెట్టయిందో అప్పుడు ఈ హాల్లో ఉన్న మిగిలిన 69 స్తంభాలన్నీ డిస్టర్బ్ అయినాయి. అప్పుడు వాళ్ళ ఇంజనీర్లు భయపడ్డారు. ఇది మూల స్తంభం, ఈ హాల్కి ఇది బ్యాలెన్స్ పిల్లర్, టాప్లో పెట్టారు కనెక్షన్. దీన్ని వాళ్ళు డిస్టర్బ్ చేస్తే ఈ హాల్ మొత్తం పడిపోతుందని అప్పుడే వాళ్ళకి అర్థం కాక భయపడి వదిలేసినారు. మొత్తం కింద గ్యాప్ ఉంది. ఇది హ్యాంగింగ్ ఉంటే బిల్డింగ్ సేఫ్గా ఉంటుంది. అదే పూర్తిగా నేల మీద కూర్చోయిందంటే బిల్డింగ్ మొత్తం పడిపోతుంది. ఆ విధంగా కనెక్షన్ ఇది టాప్లో పెట్టారు. ఈ హాల్కి బ్యాలెన్స్ పిల్లర్, కీ పిల్లర్.
The name of the British engineer who came was Lord Hamilton. There are no more records available of him. In fact, we researched a lot about him, but we couldn't find any more information at this point. But we'll dig more into it and we'll find out what exactly happened, from where they came and what exactly they were trying to do. Did they leave it at that, or did they did more of investigation? What we found out was that that was not the point where they stopped. They went more further than that. We'll see next slide. That incident in fact took place in 1902. After that, there was a study done by American Institute of Indian Sciences. This was carried out by John Fritz and George Michel. From 1980 to 2002, and for 22 years they did the study of not just Lepakshi but the entire Vijayanagara kingdom, and they mapped inch after inch every part of the kingdom, and all the records that were meticulously researched. 34,000 archaeological features were located and studied, 1,000 structures were measured and drawn. And interestingly, most of the documents that were produced, including maps, drawings and photographs, they are in the British Library and in the Asia Pacific and Africa collections. What is more interesting is that this library was started by the East India Company in 1801. Now, the obvious question should be, why is the East India Company interested in knowing all this stuff? That is for you guys to figure out. Next slide. This is the archaeological atlas. This is what I got from their research. Here they are plotting the grid of the area that they have mapped, starting from 83 until 96. Here is how they mapped the area, and this is the graphical representation, the grid layout of each and every area of that site. Go on. This is just one example. This has been done for the entire Vijayanagara kingdom, each and every site of Vijayanagara kingdom. Go on. This is what you get from all that research. This is the elevation, that is the section of it. Now, once you get the entire layout and the blueprints of the architectural building, you could figure out a way. In fact, that is the starting point where you could get the structural pressure of the entire structure, where you could get how much pressure the pillar is hanging. And in fact, that is how they did it. And this is the computer modeling done by, after all this stuff done. This is done by the VR Technologies in Bangalore. This stuff was, this computer rendering was generated in Bangalore. Now, I'm not sure if they knew what exactly that was, but this is just the one part of it. They did it for the entire kingdom. You could, if you could go to the British Library, you could get much more documents. Now, okay, this one. You could go to vijayanagar.org and get all this information. Now, there is another part. Play the video. Now, they didn't even stop here. This was started in 1980 until 2002. Now, there is an incident that took place in between this period. The guide will explain what happened over there. Now, one thing, just a second. One thing to keep in mind is that this guide is not an ordinary local guide. He is a representative of Archaeological Survey of India, and he is certified by Archaeological Survey of India. So whatever he is saying is certified.
ఈ రెండు మంటపాలు కట్టించాడు. అంటే గుడి కట్టకముందే ఈ మంటపాలు ఇక్కడ కట్టి, కానీ ఈ మంటపాలు 30 years బ్యాక్ ఈ మంటపాలు మొత్తం పడిపోయినాయి. పడిపోయినప్పుడు ఈ మంటపంలో ఈ పిల్లర్ పైన ఈ ఫ్లాట్గా ఉన్న పిల్లర్ పైన మధ్యలో దీంట్లో ఒక హోల్ లాగా వేసి దాంట్లో తాళపత్ర గ్రంథాలు ప్లస్ ఇసుక అంతా వేసి అప్పుడు పెట్టారు. అంటే దీనికి సంబంధించిన మెటీరియల్, టెంపుల్ సంబంధించిన మెసేజ్ ఏదో దీంట్లో ఉంది అని మనకి అప్పుడు తెలిసింది. దీంట్లో ఉన్నాయనేసి అని తెలిసింది. మళ్ళీ వాళ్ళు డిపార్ట్మెంట్ వాళ్ళు ఈ గుడిని మళ్ళీ దీని ఇట్లాగే మంటపాలని అప్పుడే వాళ్ళు నిలబెట్టడం జరిగింది 30 years బ్యాక్. అంతకు ముందే 800 years బ్యాక్ నుంచి కూడా ఈ మంటపాలు ఇక్కడ ఉన్నాయి. దీంట్లో అప్పుడు దొరికిన తాళపత్ర గ్రంథాలు మ్యూజియంలో పెట్టడం జరిగింది.
తాళపత్ర గ్రంథాలు ప్రజెంట్ ఎక్కడ ఉన్నాయి?
మ్యూజియంలో ఉన్నాయి. ఆర్కియాలజీ డిపార్ట్మెంట్ వాళ్ళ హ్యాండ్ ఓవర్లో ఉన్నాయి.
What he's saying is, some 3 decades ago, there were some foreigners who came with ASI officials, and they came exactly to that pillar and they took some manuscripts from there. Now, the question is, how did they know the exact location of that pillar where the manuscripts were hidden? And what was in that manuscripts? Who were those guys? We don't know at this point, but we have contacted the local ASI of Anandpur, and we'll go to the ASI in Delhi and we'll find out what exactly was those manuscripts for. And so another question is this a isolated incident that occurred in Lepakshi, or has it been done systematically at every site? And does the Vedic scholar has to know about it? Should they know about it? Is it important or not? That is the question that you should answer for yourself. Now, this is the example that Srinivas sir gave yesterday. This is in fact the book by Anti-Gravity Handbook by David Hatcher Childress, in which he explained how the Chinese, when they occupied Tibet, the soldiers were explicitly given the orders not to touch the walls of the monasteries, because there were manuscripts hidden in the walls. They took off those manuscripts, and based on that, they designed their programs. In fact, the manuscripts were sent to Punjab and Bangalore University, Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. Now, yesterday sir said that we don't know what the Bangalore Institute said, but what they said, I have the report, you can take it from me. What they said, that the report is the manuscripts are not feasible. They cannot be implementable. It's just it's not practical. After later on, the Chinese, they launched their space mission, and part of it was based on Vimanik Shastra. That they have. This is the report. This is the snapshot of that report. It's a summary. If you want to read the entire report, I have that report. This has been compiled by Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. Now, the question is that this should arise many questions in your head. Is this just a temple, or is it much more than that? Now, this is not some god. This is a Turkish dancer, and interestingly, you will find Syrian drummers and Iranian dancers. So many people on the walls right outside the temple. Now, why are these over there? Should you go and worship them also? That's the question. We'll see in the next slide. This is 1 mile away from the temple. People say that it's a temple. We'll see what it is. In fact, this is the exact view from that place, where you could see the temple from the front side of that structure. Next slide. On the other side, you could see the entire ground, where you could see the 360-degree area of that. This is not a temple. In fact, this is a watch post where you keep watch of the approaching enemy, and you have around 18 such watch posts that could signal whenever the enemy is coming. You would lit a fire, and within 1 minute, people in Penugonda would know that the enemy is approaching. So this, in fact, is a fortification, and it is very strategically placed over there. Next slide. So what we found out was that the entire structure was not just a temple. In fact, it was a fort come a temple. And if you read the manuscript, if you read the writings of the foreigners that came over there during the Vijayanagara kingdom, you will understand much more what exactly the place was. So during every year after rainy season, for 2 months they would celebrate the Mahanavami festival. in that festival, they would worship Durga, which would bless their king's weapons, troops, and animals. After that, the kings would go into a military expedition. So that, in fact, the entire puja was done for their military. It had a military purpose. And yeah, so the king, in fact, he had a lot of demand for the horses, and he imported them from Arabian Peninsula. After the Portuguese captured that trade, in the 16th century, they frequently started visiting the capital. In fact, all of the Persians, Turkish, and Syrians people, they used to come there for trade and for different purposes. At that time, the capital was in fact the Paris of the world. It was called the Paris of the world. It's not called, but today the historians call it that way. And yeah, go on. So, what is the relevance of all these things that we found out? It's mythology, it's history, and they say, okay, it's a structure, but what is its relevance at this moment in time? We'll see with two case studies what is the relevance of all this today. This is in fact a water channel. Inside, all the waters inside, we collected here, and it is channeled through over here. This is from the top view, how the water comes out from there. It's like a tap. That was the inside part. From here, all the water would flow down. It's a slope. So it would flow down at the end of the structure, and it would go outside. Outside from that place, it would come over here. This is the water tank. This used to be a water tank. Now it's a ruined structure. They are all grass grown, and it's ruined. But technically, in ideal case, it should be like this. And this is the place from where all the communities around, some of them, they are even growing rice and nowadays corn over there. It's all in ruins, but it could be renovated. Yeah, go on. So that is one community. Another is, if you go around the temple, you could find these kind of stones. There are grooves made over here. I'm not sure if you could see this, but there are square grooves made over there. And there are so many stones lying around in different part of the execution where they were cutting the stones. This is a stone where it's unfinished stone, but it's cut from here. So once you make the grooves on that stone, and there are certain kind of chemicals with herbs mixed and applied over there that could make the stone malleable, and you make the stone in any shape that you want. So that's in fact a different kind of study altogether. But this is how it's done, and go on. These are grooves that are made on the stones at every places where the stones are cut from. That in fact, the entire structure is built on a dome kind of a stone. It's called a tortoise shape, and so this is the place around the places where they used to cut the stones from, and from there, here they would mix the herbs and make a chemical. From that, they would cut the stones. There are so many communities, in fact, still who are doing this kind of things, stone cutting, and even there are paintings on the walls. And those paintings, the saris that we wear today, those are the same designs that are drawn on that walls. There are so many of them. And in fact, there are different communities who used to do that. For example, the stone cutters and the communities who would carve the temples and the gods on them, and the priests and all of them. And so all of those communities, in fact, they used to come together and converge at that temple structure. And it was in fact the heart of the village. And so it was in fact a holistic approach that was formed at that time, a combination of all these communities. And if you read the history by the foreigners and in fact the chronicles who wrote that, all these communities, they contributed, in fact they were driving the economy. So the question is, what is the future of those communities? What are they doing today? This is just the statistic of the farmers, and 8.6 million disappeared in just 10 years. This is just for 10 years. If you go for 60 years, you'll find much more. In fact, from farmers, most of them committed suicide, as you already must have been reading in the newspapers, and they are getting converted into laborers. Most of them commit suicide. People say various reasons: corruption, or no rain, and genetically modified seeds, and there are so many reasons people give about it. But what we do over here is we take a problem, a particular problem, and study it in a holistic pattern, and then we